Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
All right, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast. I'm here at MODEX 2020 in Atlanta, and I am at the Manhattan Associates booth. I'm joined by Adam Kline. He's the Senior Director, Product Management. He's going to talk to us a little bit about Manhattan Associates, what they do, his side of the business, which is a WMS system, and also tell us a little bit about how Manhattan's keeping up with the times and how technology is changing so rapidly. So, Adam, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
Yeah, doing real well. Happy to be here. Thanks for the time.
Definitely. Happy we could finally connect. I know we've been trying to do this over a couple months, so we happen to be in the same place, so it's perfect.
Yeah, it works really well. This is a good place to do it. Lots of fun stuff on the floor here, and hopefully some exciting stuff that we're showing off as well.
Definitely, and Atlanta is, I guess, the home of Manhattan, too, as well. So
It is. Not Manhattan as in New York, but
Manhattan Associates, right?
Manhattan Associates, by way of Manhattan Beach, California, 20-something years ago. So.
Oh, okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit, about yourself and what your role is at Manhattan?
Yeah, sure. So, thanks again for the time here. I've been with Manhattan for a long time, actually my entire career, almost 23 years at Manhattan Associates, all within the warehouse management space.
Okay.
Kind of started in the R&D department and have moved into a leadership role where I now own the strategy and roadmap of our warehouse management applications.
Okay, very nice. 23 years. That's a long time.
It is.
All right, so tell us a little bit about Manhattan Associates in general, and tell us a little bit about the WMS and kind of what kind of offerings on that side of the business you guys have.
Yeah, sure. So, founded, as I mentioned, Manhattan Beach, California back in 1991. So we've been in business for a good while now. Kind of cut our teeth with warehouse management was really the first application that we built. But since then, we've really built quite a lot of additional applications, and they really are broken into three main groupings. So one is our inventory, things like demand forecasting, inventory optimization. Another is our omni-channel suite, which is really retail, front of store, order management, order sourcing, that type of thing.
Okay.
Also point of sale, so good retail footprint there. And then the supply chain, which includes warehouse management, which is my product, transportation management, labor, slotting, everything else that has to do with the supply chain.
Okay, great. And so, Manhattan is probably one of the most prevalent systems that's out there. There's a lot of operations that utilize Manhattan Associates, and I've used it personally myself as well. We were just talking about I've been to the headquarters for training and everything. So, why do you think that is? What differs about Manhattan from some of the other systems that are out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we have been fortunate enough to be recognized as a leader in the industry for quite a long time. 11 straight publications of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Taking that leadership position. I think it really has to do with the fact that we have a lot of very tenured people that know supply chain, that know the warehouse, understand the challenges. We put our customers first. We listen to them. We understand what they're going through, and I think have a good idea of what's coming as well.
Okay.
I think kind of have a good finger on the pulse of the industry and try to stay connected. We've been building out the WMS application, but also all the adjacent applications around that for a good long time now. So I think we've been at it for a long time. We've got really, really good people, and really, I think the biggest piece of it is we've got really great customers that are willing to share and provide great feedback and help us innovate even more.
Right. I think that's very important. Not even just from a perspective of distribution company, just listening to the customer as well is really important. So it's good whenever a a solution provider for distribution is also doing the same thing, right?
Well,
so
sure.
you guys can work in synergy to kind of deliver the best possible to the end user, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we can dream up all kinds of things in a lab or back in a
Right.
conference room, but is that really going to take hold? We have to listen to the to the voice of the customer and make sure that whatever we build, whatever we provide to the market, is going to have practical application. And you hear a lot of buzzwords out there, and we'll actually talk about a couple of them. But I'll talk about how we've applied those in the application in such a way that it's actually providing value, not just being able to tick a box that says, hey, yes, we have that capability.
Definitely. So now tell us a little bit about, I guess, from a WMS perspective. So some things that I've actually been hearing here at MODEX already is, talking about the importance of making sure that your systems are keeping up with the level of automation that you're trying to implement. So tell us a little bit, I guess, about the importance of maintaining your system and updating your system, and why it's important to keep, I guess, upgrading your WMS.
Yeah, it's a great question. When you first lay out your distribution center, oftentimes you make decisions around the automation. You build the DC around the automation because it's big, right? And it's a huge expense as well. Now, what happens is, sometimes you might ultimately start hitting up against the capacity of the distribution center, and so now what, right? So, as you roam the floor here at MODEX, you see a lot of, AMRs or automated mobile robots.
Right.
You see a lot of other kind of more flexible, dynamic solutions from an automation perspective, and and then think about just your people as well being kind of a very flexible resource. So, our job is to ensure that not only can you make the best use of that kind of static resource that you've built a DC around, but also be able to bring in some of these more flexible, dynamic things like the AMRs, like some of the other things you see around here, with as little disruption as possible, so that you can really kind of grow beyond what you thought you could do. And then, as you think about maybe additional distribution centers and doing things differently, you may not want to do a cookie cutter, what I did before, or do it all over again.
Right.
You may want to, take, make use of some of the new cool stuff that we're seeing around the floor here, right? Yeah, so we've got to do that. You've got to keep the software up to date because it's whether it's connectivity to the robotics, connectivity to the automation, or just new ways of flowing orders through the distribution center.
Right.
We've got to be flexible and nimble, and keeping the software up to date is ultimately going to help you get there.
Definitely. I think you said something really important there, that you need to be flexible and nimble, right? Especially in distribution and warehousing. I mean, that's extremely important because you never know when the customer need is going to change or the demand is going to change, whatever the case may be, right? So, what would you say to, I guess, the person that's, people get scared when they say, like, I got to change my system or I got to upgrade my system. So, what would you say to the person that's kind of a little maybe timid about making that change and, kind of, I guess, tell them, it's worth it to upgrade, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two ways to go about that conversation. And what we usually would lead with is, all the new benefits and all the new innovations that we've been building into the system, whether it's order streaming, which is our, waveless fulfillment, processes, our WES or warehouse execution system built within the WMS that allows you connectivity to all these different cool automation and robots and everything else.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something a little bit more tangible from an end user perspective, like a new mobile workflow, or something for a supervisor, like a command and control console that allows them to see everything that's happening inside the distribution center. There's a lot of new innovations that have been coming out in our WMS over the past few years, that ultimately are going to drive real value to that customer. So there's the carrot, right, which is all the new stuff, but then there's also there's a stick there as well, which is not really necessarily imposed by by us or really any other software provider, but it's just infrastructure, right? You hear all about security breaches. You hear about those types of things that if you don't stay on top of keeping your systems up to date and your infrastructure up to date, then you can get into a bit of a problem at some point that you really don't want to get there, right?
Definitely,
so I think there's a little bit of risk mitigation, as well as probably more importantly for at least the way I talk to customers is here's all the things that you can drive some real value, drive more efficiency on the floor.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a good point because you're looking at maybe like, oh, I'm gonna disrupt my operation for a little bit, and I'm scared to do that.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, down in the long term, down the road, you're gonna disrupt it way more if you don't keep up with the infrastructure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and very possibly, as we said before, maybe outgrow your outgrow your capacity that you originally designed for. That original design can only take you so far.
Right.
You gotta change things up and make them adjustments. Whether it's operationally or systematically or both. And oftentimes it's both.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a great point. So you're going to be talking later today, day 2 at MODEX. You're going to be talking on the topic of orchestrating man and machine. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what that's going to be about, and then how Manhattan is kind of continuously improving through this different orchestration.
Sure. Yeah. So that session is really all about if you think about the WMS and its role, in optimizing the distribution center over the course of a number of years, it's really been around making the people more productive.
Right.
But with this growth, this hyper growth of automation in the DC, we've got to be very cognizant of what's happening. Whether it's a unit sorter or put walls or even packing stations, auto stores, robots. I mean, you name it. Those things. We're interacting with them across our customer base, and we've got to make sure that the WMS is ultimately equipped to handle not only the communication but also the optimization within those different types of automation. So, orchestrating orders and determining, okay, do I send this order down a kind of a manual pick path where my people are going to pick and then take it to a traditional packing station, pack it out, or is it going to go to a goods to person and to make use of all the efficiency that's there. Our system has got to be, intelligent enough to make that decision. And, so when you think about orchestrating across man and machine, it's really bringing those two worlds together and providing optimization at a holistic level.
Okay.
And so, the talk is really around the warehouse execution system that we've built within our WMS, along with the intelligence and optimization that comes along with order streaming, intelligent work release based off of capacities on the floor, and how does that all interact and work together.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Interesting. So it's kind of going back to your point about the infrastructure, right? So that infrastructure and the systems in between the man and the machine, right, is really kind of the glue that's holding everything together and then making everything work kind of in synergy.
That's right. And our view has been that the term WES or warehouse execution system has been on the in the market for a while now, but our view is that it's been very hardware centric.
Okay.
It's really been, how do I get the most out of the automation, and it's typically been a single threaded automation conversation, right? So many of the WESs that are out there are actually built and provided by a hardware manufacturer.
Right.
Makes it very difficult to be agnostic to all the different types of automation you might put in the DC.
Right.
Ours is vendor and equipment agnostic.
Yeah.
Right. So we can truly orchestrate across not just one type of or one vendor's equipment, but you bring in a mishmash, which is really what we see on the in any distribution center these days. Is sometimes you call it a Franken warehouse or whatever, where you bring together all these different things and cobble them together, and it works for you because it was purpose built and designed, and you use best of breed of all these different vendors. Well, then you need something to kind of stitch that all together, and that's where the WES comes in. And a good WES is going to be agnostic to whatever vendor you bring in.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's really important too, especially as we increase the level of automation, increase the level of technology, and especially as I think it becomes more accessible to more companies. Right?
That's right.
Before it was kind of like, the Amazons and stuff, they got a lot of cash, so they can throw it at all this automation. But now, like, everybody's kind of getting into it, maybe out of necessity, right, because of labor shortages and things of that nature. So it's really important, and I think to your point, that you continue with that infrastructure and you get these systems in place to make sure that everything is operating together in synergy, like we talked about before, right? So So now,
yeah, and one comment there. You mentioned accessibility, and,
Right.
and one thing that you'll notice as you talk to especially some of the robotics providers, is this new kind of you've heard of software as a service. Well, now
Right.
there's robots as a service.
robots as a service, yeah.
Yeah, which is a pretty interesting way to think about it, and there's even programs that allow you to scale up your robots for peak and then scale them back down for your normal days. So some interesting things that some of these companies are doing to really bring this these new, more sophisticated solutions to the mass market.
Definitely, yeah. And you mentioned robots as a service. Actually, I saw you guys have the Locust bot here.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
actually went to Locust headquarters and talked to them about that, and we talked about the whole robots as a service thing. I think it's pretty remarkable, and it does make it a lot more accessible, like you mentioned. And with that accessibility, I think you're probably going to see, or maybe you're probably already seeing, a lot of companies that are now like, I could put automation in. It's like getting affordable for me. But they probably have some outdated or old system that now they need to upgrade in to support that.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, that's a key. Is as you get more sophisticated automation and solutions that are out there, well then how do you best integrate with that? How do you communicate with it? Older systems may not even support the communication methodologies like JSON and some of these other new ways of transmitting data. So you may be on the outside looking in, until you bump up your WMS version, for example.
Definitely. So with all this technology that's changing and that's rapidly becoming more accessible, how is Manhattan kind of keeping up with that as well, and making sure that not only Manhattan itself is keeping up from their system standpoint, but helping their current customers keep up too?
Yeah, so I think that probably the biggest thing that we've done, and I've mentioned the warehouse execution system, kind of building the foundation of how do we interact with these things. But then to keep it current, we've kind of wrapped a program around it called the Manhattan Automation Network, where we're bringing in some of these providers and partners. And we're building kind of purpose-built, out-of-the-box integration with them that can then be delivered to the customer as a starting point, and really get that project up and running in a rapid amount of time. So two of the exhibitors here in our booth that are partnered here, Right Hand Robotics and Locust Robotics are part of that program. And so what we do is we come up with a fundamental kind of core design. This is how we think that customers are going to use these solutions with our application. We'll co-design it. We'll build whatever integration is necessary, which from our point is mostly configuration, not code. And generally they have a good set of APIs. They're callable. And then through our WES, we'll make those calls, and then we'll collaboratively test that. So we set up a sandbox. We test it together, and then we give them a certified seal of approval. And then customers can they understand, hey, this particular vendor that I'm kind of thinking about, well, they're already plugged into the Manhattan Automation Network, so I know it's going to be a lot easier. And so we'll continue to grow that over time and work with more and more providers that are out there and build that ecosystem. And I think that'll help us stay kind of on top of the trends, stay on top of the costs, because that's a big concern for a lot of customers. We talked about robots as a service. We got to be thoughtful about the integration cost, because if you bring the cost and make those robots accessible, but then you're staring down this huge statement of work from an implementation perspective, kind of throws things off. So
definitely. All right, that's good to hear. And I am seeing like more and more companies, I guess, collaborating more, which I think is awesome for the industry. I think it's only going to help us grow more and create just better service levels at the end of the day for the end user, which is kind of what our industry is all about, right?
Absolutely. In fact, last year at Momentum, our user conference, we had these two vendors I just mentioned, Locust and Right Hand Robotics. We had them showing off both of their applications at our show. But what was interesting is the Locust robot would actually zoom over to the Right Hand robot, and the Right Hand robot would pick an item, and so all that's being orchestrated by our WES and all of our intelligence and everything. So it's a pretty nice story where you've got kind of three companies working together to collaborate on a solution, where you had a pick to tote, and then moving the inventory from that tote maybe into a sorter, for example.
Very interesting. Yeah, let's see a video of that.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So now why don't you talk to us, so we mentioned you have Right Hand Robotics and Locust Bot in the booth here, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys are exhibiting as a whole here?
Yeah, so at the front of the booth you'll see both of those solutions, and they're the right-hand bot is picking from one tote and placing it in another, just kind of a little demo scenario that they've got going.
Okay.
The Locust robot is there for people to kind of see and get up close to and see kind of how large the totes are, and kind of envision, okay, well, how does my product set correspond to this? Because some of these things, if you think about it, there are going to be some level of constraints in terms of I can't put a television on one of these guys potentially. Maybe they can figure it out with a different attachment. I don't know, but there's going to be some physics involved. So getting up close and personal is really good. We've got some videos that are playing in between that kind of help people understand our role in this, because the robots are really cool.
Yeah.
But without the intelligence behind it, which is where the WMS comes into play, it's difficult to really capture the value of what some of these things can do. So, that's really what the story is that we're telling is how do you take some of these things that you're seeing out on the floor and represented by the examples here of our partners, and how can you actually leverage those in your DC, and how do they actually make your people more efficient? And that's really the story that we're telling is, well, the WMS comes in and helps you understand, okay, how do I flow orders? When do I flow orders down to those robots to make sure that you hit your cutoff times, to make sure that you're hitting your promises, and maximizing the efficiency of your people and your robots and everything else that you've got.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I think that's great because, it's one thing to see, I guess, just like these robots zooming around and everything, and like, wow, that's cool. And then, but to be able to kind of now envision it and see how you can apply it to your situation and your operation, I think is really important.
Right.
So now you mentioned Momentum. So you guys have Momentum coming up. So can you tell us a little bit of information about that?
Yeah,
and when
sure.
It is?
Yeah, our annual user conference. We have we typically kind of alternate venues. East Coast, West Coast. Not always. This year it's back at the West Coast. It's going to be at the Aria in Las Vegas.
Okay.
In the May timeframe, so mid-May. And looking forward to 3 days of really good content. We've always got good customer speakers, great partners. I'd say it's one of the best supply chain omni-channel shows around. I mean, it's very targeted. It's more of a where you're at MODEX here, you can get lost in all the in all the stuff. Obviously, it's quite a bit smaller. But really great content, and that's what we always try to provide is fantastic customer stories, showcase off all the product innovations of the year, what's happening in the in the different solutions that we talked about earlier. And it's just a great time for customers to come together, collaborate, network, talk about hey. We've done this. We've brought in an auto store, and this is what we're seeing. Or we brought in robots, and this is what we're seeing. Or we brought in a new implementation of omni-channel and put it on top of our warehouse management. Now we're able to source 70% of our orders from our store network because we're so much closer to our customers now, right? So some really great stories that you're going to see around those types of things from across the customer base.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I love that because I think it's really important for people to kind of step outside their industry sometimes and see how other people are utilizing technologies and what they're getting, because you can, a lot of times people maybe think like, I'm in the auto industry and that person, they're distributing like dog food. There's nothing in common, but then when you start to talk about them, you're like, oh, maybe that is like something I could use in my operation. So it's good that you guys are providing like that platform to hear those like success stories and also learnings, so people can kind of take away from that and kind of tweak a little bit for whatever it is that they might have in their side of the business. So, so it's really good stuff. So how can people find out more about Manhattan Associates? Yeah,
so www.manh.com is our website. A lot of really great information about all of our solutions, some good case studies that are there. And of course, anyone that's really interested in talking, anybody that's here at the show can stop by our booth 7485 here at MODEX. And we're always around and willing and able to to have conversations around what's going on with anyone that wants to understand more about supply chain, inventory, omni-channel. We're here to help.
Okay, great. And we'll post more information about all that and all those links on thenewwarehouse.com. So, Adam, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about that.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.